I don't know. It depends. Like, do you want to be taken seriously today?
I'm horrified that CM has ideas. Oh my god, that's
right?
so gross.
Right?
But that is exactly what it's like.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, CM Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hey, everybody.
And on this episode, we are mad with Marchness. It's March Madness!
We are mad with Marchness.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Josh is our coach today, and there will be spoilers, fair warning. But before we begin, I wanted to share a fact about March Madness that I recently learned, so thank you, howstuffworks.com. The term March Madness was first coined by Henry V. Porter in 1939 to describe the annual Illinois High School Association tournament. And I'll share the quote that started this. So this is Porter describing a basketball fan. In everyday life, he is a sane, serious individual trying to earn enough to pay his taxes. But he does a Jekyll Hyde act when the spell is on him. The thud of the ball on the floor, the slap of hands on leather, the swish of the net are music in his ears. He is biased, noisy, fidgety, boastful, and unreasonable, but we love him for his imperfections. The writer's temperature is rising. The thing is catching. It's got me. Give me that playing schedule.
That's wild.
Isn't that like poetry?
So intense. Yeah.
Yeah. But that description, I do have to say, even though it is beautiful, it does kind of make sports fans sound like real basket cases.
Ah.
And I know I usually give zero dunks about this, how this works, but I wanted to share this fun fact because we've mentioned a couple times on our show, we live on the border of two states, basically, Iowa and Illinois. So we've worked, played, lived in both. And anytime something is based in either one, it's like our own backyard.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was cool that it was Illinois. Okay.
That's rad.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
I have a classic sports joke for you.
Oh, I can't wait to
I
hear a classic
this one. I think this one,
sports joke.
If I were to pick a sports joke, I feel like this is the one I would pick.
Good.
Why did the coach go to the bank?
Why?
He wanted to get his quarterback. All right, let's whip out our full metal brackets and get into this thing.
Oh! There we go. Yes. I'm so hyped. You've brought so much energy into this March Madness. CM, this is going to be such a blast. And I almost mean that literally. Because this year,
right.
this year's bracket is our Sweet 16 of Stephen King destructions. Stephen King apocalypses.
I don't think I even appreciated or understood what that meant for this episode until I, for the first time in, okay, we haven't been doing this every year, but for however long we had this idea and started doing this, I filled out my brackets.
I'm so touched. I'm truly touched.
Although I did really go hard last episode we recorded. Yeah. I was like, why are you doing this? I'm not going to look at this again. Yeah. This is a waste of my time.
I had assumed I brought more in case you had thrown it away by the time I got here.
Yeah, listeners, he really tried to hand me another piece of paper with it. I'm such a jerk.
You met me with such shock. I was shocked.
He was.
Now, let's go through what our tragedies are going to be. So for our first episode, the bracket is going to be The Apocalypse of Lud versus The Long Walk, The Nuke in Las Vegas versus The Explosion of the Overlook, The Slaughter of Desperation versus The Collapse of the Arrowhead Project, and The Flooding of Derry versus The Black Prom.
Some tough ones.
The thing that was most fun about picking tragedies was because the scale is so different. The impact of all of them are so different, but to their book, they are so cataclysmic.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, we are going to go ahead and get right into our very first matchup. Are you ready for this, CM?
I am so ready.
So we are going to go with The Apocalypse of Lud versus The Long Walk. Either one of those, do you have one you want to jump out and just give us your ideas on?
Yeah, so for our listeners who aren't familiar with or don't climb the tower, Lud is a city in Midworld, and it's kind of a twinner of New York. We visited it in the Wastelands.
Mm-hmm.
It is basically a post apocalyptic, kind of like battle royale, purge, Hunger Games style situation. And people, before this terrible thing happened, people were already killing themselves every day throughout the day. And Blaine the Mono released this painful poisonous gas. And our travelers saw citizens voluntarily lining up to be quickly executed. So if New York has about 8 million people in it, even accounting for the fact that in this world a lot of people probably died as a result of, this apocalypse, and many more die each day, we're still talking like millions of deaths when this happens.
For sure.
As the train is rolling out of the station. So I don't want to be anywhere near Lud ever. I'm kind of feeling like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a full-scale apocalypse, for sure. For me, I think the first thing I think about when I think about the apocalypse of Lud is the pressing machines, for sure.
Yeah,
great.
That's the worst.
But it is the gas, and then isn't it a line from Blaine that's something like it looks like it's painless, but it's not.
Yeah, when you find out, it's horrible, horrible deaths.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take the long walk then here. So the long walk, we talked about in The Long Walk, which was a Richard Bachman story, and as we read it, I think uncovered in that reading it was one of the very early books he'd ever written. And The Long Walk is in this dictatorship, this military, what is the
totalitarian dystopia?
Yeah, exactly. And the major runs this competition called The Long Walk, where 100 boys between the ages of, I believe, 12 and 17, 12 and 18 are put in a death march, and they have to keep a speed.
Well, they volunteer for it.
That's true. They enter their own names. They're even allowed to back out if they so choose, except until the actual day of the competition. There's a strict deadline, but there's 2 dropout dates even to get out of it if you get drawn. So it's a 1 in 100 chance. But if you win the prize. And so that's our synopsis of The Long Walk.
Yeah, and the prize is whatever you want.
Right.
It to be.
Could be some new feet, could be your mom.
Yeah, listeners, check out our episodes if you're like, what are you guys talking about?
I didn't want to go directly to that, but I can't help it.
But what else happened while we were reading that? Nothing. Nothing except for Eve's new ending.
Oh, it's so classic. All right, so comparing what's the first thing you think about when you think of The Long Walk?
I'm glad you asked that. That is a perfect question, because the first thing that popped into my head thinking about, okay, which of these two, I know like this dystopian military future is horrible, but it's also orderly and it makes sense. And it seems like, too, they know how to entertain. Judging from some of the other shows that they talk about in the book that are fun with huge quotes around it. So I don't know. It's a world that knows how to keep its citizens engaged as opposed to slaughtering them all day, every day throughout the day.
You're 100% correct. If these were based on efficiency, then The Long Walk would certainly have it out because it's got the formula down. I don't know if we ever find out how many long walks there have been.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a mention of like I feel like there would be a banner with the anniversary or something.
Because it's almost like this lore. It's like they've been going on, but we don't ever really get to explore the world that this is set in, unless you watch The Running Man, which you're still not exploring it, but that's okay.
I think the biggest world building thing that I remember from our reading was that there were odds in Vegas on The Long Walk, and that was the what gave us the idea of this being the Super Bowl of this world,
Yeah.
of this entire country. It might be the only thing they get to see
It's their March
televised.
Madness.
It's their March Madness. So yeah, the organization I get, and only 99 kids are dying a year.
I mean, depending on your philosophy of morality, you might feel like that's a better deal than how many people die in Lud every day.
Given the way the long walk ends, not the secret ending, but the
Yeah.
actual ending, it's left very ambiguous as to whether our protagonist is
Mhm.
even sane or dying or anything. How many long walkers do you think survive long after the walk?
How many winners?
Yeah.
You know? Okay, wow, I hate to compare it to this because it makes me feel, I don't know, I'm embarrassed. I don't know why. Maybe I don't have a reason to be embarrassed, but it makes me, like, we get this question answered in the Hunger Games
Yeah.
movies. Yeah, so I
Mhm.
immediately think of that. And so I guess I want to say that they either, it just depends on the person. Like, I bet some of them, this experience ruins their lives. Like, the prize is not worth it because of what they had to go through to get it. And that's kind of the whole point of a Bachman book, right?
Right, yeah.
Even if it's a positive outcome or a quote unquote happy ending, it isn't.
Mhm.
And so I would place my bet on them, on the odds being low that a lot of them survive or even have okay lives. Like, maybe they survive, but are they living?
Yeah, I bet there is a lot of celebrity that would come with it.
And you'd have to be a certain type of person to be able to have a party lifestyle after that and enjoy your winnings, whatever those may be.
Which we don't even get what day-to-day life is like in this world,
Mm-mm.
really, to know what rock star living even is
Yeah.
in this government regime.
Yeah, that's true. So how do we do this year?
So I feel like with this first round, there are a few things that I'm kind of looking at. And one of them is, for me, I want to focus on, in this first round, it's kind of unfair because it's about how the tragedy changed the book.
Mm-hmm.
With The Long Walk, it's fundamentally the book. How would you say the Apocalypse of Lead changes the wasteland or even just the world of the Dark Tower?
I feel like it would be this huge moment that would eventually make its way across Midworld and whatever other worlds we are in, because it's coming at such a strange time, right? Because the world is moving on, and it seems like all of these kind of grand world-changing, world-shaping events are in this world's history.
Yeah.
And so now to have something like this, it's almost like an apocalypse in reverse. If something dormant like Blaine the Mono is now waking up in this way, I hate to say it like this, but it's almost like things are coming back to life, even though this was like pure destruction and chaos.
Mm-hmm. And it's with the scale of the destruction of this city. The difference for me is that in Lud, because it really doesn't have much more of an effect on it. It doesn't have much of an effect on the world around it anymore because the world is experiencing its own death rattle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all winding down. And so for me, that's where I'm kind of leaning, where The Long Walk is taking the edge for me. Pure body count, the Apocalypse of Lud would have it hands down, but I think lasting impact, The Long Walk keeps a regime in order. It keeps an entire country dormant.
Yeah, it has control.
Yeah.
And that, I don't even want to comment on that. It hurts my heart too much. I can't.
Do you have any more thoughts on this battle?
No, I think we covered it.
All right, ready to lock in your vote?
I am.
All right, listeners, because this is more of a head-to-head discussion,
Mm-hmm.
I thought the best way for Sam and I to handle this would be to write down our pick And on the count of 3, we're going to show each other our choice. If it's the same choice, it moves forward. If it's a different choice, we've got some interesting tiebreaker discussion questions. I'm horrified that CM has ideas for what could break ties.
I do?
Oh, it sounded like you might.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I was just excited by the idea of it.
Great. All
now
right.
I'm like, oh, shit.
Perfect.
I should have thought of that.
Then you're
what are we going to do?
Then I'm so glad you did all this pre-work and I still found a way to stay in control of information.
You mean I gave you this? Because I'm in control.
It's a real gift. Thank you.
You know, you're going to watch the movie Presents, and this moment's going to feel real weird later.
I can't wait.
Me neither.
All right, here we go. Our first battle on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I went with The Long Walk.
I went with The Apocalypse of Blood.
Interesting. All right, hit me.
So the reason that I chose The Apocalypse of Blood is that I am really sick. And in a very feverish state, I wrote down the wrong one. I was really making a case in an argument for The Long Walk. And I even had one prepared. Like, why I chose The Long Walk, it's because it's for boys only, and I'm not a boy, so I'm pretty safe, and it seems orderly. And I really appreciate that. Now I'm like, oh no, I can't fake an argument for The Apocalypse of Blood on the fly to hide my own mistake. So I just have to be honest. And it's a lot of words. And at no point while writing them did I think, wait, that's the wrong thing. All right, so let me see if I can do this. Oh, this is great. I'm doing great.
Did you do that with all of your picks? Do you want to take a minute just to really
we're
double check?
gonna roll with this.
All right.
What happens. Okay. I think that I want to be, now that I have to, a part of a world where, Josh, I really loved, you used death rattle. And I kind of described it as a renewal, like something is happening again when nothing was. That's intriguing. And what is the ripple effect of that? And I want to see that. So I'm in Lud. I'm going to try not to breathe in the poisonous gas or...
I don't know why you just decided you had to be at one of these.
That's how I made all of my choices. Commit. I kind of... Yeah, we do this every year.
Sure.
We have arbitrary and varying reasons for our picks that we never discuss with each other until we kind of figure them out on the episode. And one of my things is, okay, I am here. I'm going to have to experience this. What are my odds? I made this very personal. And also part of it's probably going to be, which books do I like best?
Perfect.
Okay, what about you?
For me, it is the longevity. It is the tragedy that is slowly doled out. It's the fact that with, yes, the apocalypse of Lud, millions die, and it is painful and weirdly religiously sacrificial for some of them. So some of them are having a good time. But with the Long Walk, it's institutional. It is ingrained. And when you take a look at each of the stories that we got to experience, so many of those brutal deaths were at the point of you have to remind yourself that, oh, it's a 9-year-old that just had their sanity break and run into the woods and get shot. Because which was part of the effective allegory for Vietnam and we also talked about Lord of the Flies in that story as well. When you put characters in such harsh shit, you forget how young they are. So yeah, I think that overall, long term, the personal and societal devastation, The Long Walk is the more devastating Stephen King event.
Okay. I think those are both solid arguments.
Did I sway you? Would you consider yourself swayed? Or would you like to go to our first tiebreaker?
I think that the chaos of not knowing what effect this sudden event is going to have. I don't know, the unpredictability of that has power to it. So I don't think I'm swayed, but that was really, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to go to our first tiebreaker then.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a number 1 through 6.
3.
Interesting. This tiebreaker discussion question is going to be...
I thought you were just one of them was going to be assigned.
Which event had the bigger ripple effect across King's universe?
It has to be the apocalypse of blood. Well, just because in this world there's so many thinnies, and what's happening in Midworld, we know. I don't know if we if we technically know that at the level we are, but for those of us who have climbed the tower before, we know the outcome. So I think that one is the one that the apocalypse that happened in Lud. There are things now happening in other worlds, in big cities.
Interesting. All right. I like that you took it as more of a what if.
Wait, what do you mean?
My argument for why the long walk is the clear answer here.
Oh, because there's like solid evidence of its devastation, and I'm like, ooh, but
it could be.
But this is like so how I
1,000%.
Why I love the breathing method, because there's like the club episodes, you know, there's no real end, and you get to kind of explore that yourself.
Right. But I think that in the end, if we're going to talk about impact on the world, that ripple effect, the Lud has no actual ripple effect because it's the end of a dead land. There's nothing else there. And so I think that that's a period where the long walk is a continual tragedy, and I think that is what will give it the impact edge.
All right, let's go with the long walk.
All right, we have the long walk advancing.
That's the uncertainty. I can't I can't argue with the certainty of the long walk.
All right, with the long walk advancing, let's find out who the long walk will be facing off in the quarterfinals. This next matchup is going to be comparing the nuke in Las Vegas to the explosion of the Overlook.
I'm so excited.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to launch into it?
Is that okay if I go again?
Yeah.
Okay. Whew. All right. I want to talk about Las Vegas first, because this requires living in a world where Captain Trips exists, based on the rules that I arbitrarily made up for myself, where I am here, which is what I thought COVID was going to be, kind of.
We all did at the beginning.
Any Stephen King fan did. And COVID really changed all of our lives and how we do things. And I adapted and figured it out. Not that it wasn't without tragedy. I'm not diminishing it, but I am feeling pretty confident that I could get by in this world, especially with my boyfriend, Alex Flagder Skarsflag. And I assume he'd bring his brother, Bill Skarsflag. And of course, Devin would be with me, because I love Devin. Talk about final foregasm.
Oh!
That's a March Madness pun, right?
Yep,
okay,
it sure is.
Does it work?
Sure is. You nailed
I wasn't sure.
it.
Okay,
you
cool.
Nailed it.
Okay, so I guess I'm kind of arguing horniness will protect me from nuclear explosions. But we all have our own armor in life that keeps us safe.
I love it. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
That's really a beautiful argument.
What do you think about the nuclear explosion?
It is... We've definitely had conversations about Stephen King endings.
Yeah.
And I truthfully so much love the Hand of God ending of The Stand. I will often think of that final moment with Randall Flagg, what he must be thinking as he watches Trash Can Man drive the nuke just straight back into town to his doorstep, essentially. And he just sees it all come together and devastation happens. It has to be so goddamn frustrating, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So when I think about the Las Vegas nuke, I think frustration.
A good leader's plan's ruined.
Right. By a loyal servant just returning
Too
a
loyal.
bomb. Too
Just too
loyal.
loyal.
All right, let's I'll talk about the explosion of the Overlook. Obviously, we get that in The Shining and we get revisited a little bit in Doctor Sleep.
Mhm.
But the explosion of the Overlook is devastating, not in the body count of the explosion itself, but its devastation is in everything that it took before being destroyed and the quality of evil that's destroyed with it.
Mhm.
Whereas other things could be a tragedy, this is more of a destroying win.
Yeah. This is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that as much as I took shots at the Kubrick movie because it's fun. The thing that I love about the miniseries that I'll always love over the ending of Kubrick's is that self-sacrifice of Jack Torrance
Mhm.
coming back to himself and damning all of the spirits and taking them with him
Yeah.
to save his family and save everyone.
I'm so glad that you took the description for the Overlook explosion because
Because I love Jack so much.
yeah, because he's your Annie Wilkes.
Yeah,
Like
he
we've
really
said,
is.
you have this connection to this character, and so it gives you a really cool perspective. Kind of like mine with Alexander Skarsgård.
But very similar
Yeah,
perspective.
they both
Yes.
carry the same emotional weight.
We talk about them both in a very similar way.
So I was really struck by a lot of what you said.
Mhm.
It's I was also thinking about the scale of things. And okay, the explosion was devastating, but it's survivable as long as you're not Jack or the ghosts. And if you think about it, you'd have a really good time beforehand partying at the Overlook. A full bar, ghost decade of really cool style and class. And because I included
True.
adaptations with the Alexander Skarsgård thing, you could potentially make friends with the hedge animals and ride them around. That's part of my argument.
Wow.
And
Domesticating the Overlook is such a weird idea, but I love the idea of Randall Flagg moving into the Overlook and then, domesticating it. That's fantastic.
and the ghosts want to be your friends. They just want to play. And I like friends. Seems like a good place to go.
So it seems like you would be looking at its explosion as a true tragedy because you're losing all of those options.
No, I still think it needs to happen. I would be hopeful that I could get out, though. I could survive it.
Let's talk about the loss. What each of these destructive events cost us. So I mentioned that with the Overlook, it's the end of the malevolent force that exists within the Overlook, and all of those ghosts, which we find out in Doctor Sleep, the ghosts essentially just become scattered at some point. What are the big standout loss of life to you in the Nuke from Vegas?
Although, sorry, you just made me realize something. Kind of going back to the Overlook explosion for a moment. Are we including, since it's the explosion, are we limiting our knowledge of its impact to The Shining? Or since we've covered Dr. Sleep on our show, can we consider that there's this more grand scale kind of, like at least in the United States, effect? Because we have
absolutely.
people, the creatures feeding on this place. Okay. All right, cool. All right. So we have the Overlook devastation is not just limited to the caretaker and the family and the ghosts there. Okay, awesome. So for the Nuke, it's, I'm going to sound bad. Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate because we have the very obvious, like this big evil thing was destroyed. Is this Randall Flagg, this evil, horrible, whatever he is thing, and all of his followers and just bad people, right? And that's sort of the religious tone of it, the white, the light, the good versus Las Vegas. But I would like to think of it a little more practically because the end of the world has happened and all you have left, in this country at least, are these two societies. And we just lost an entire society and all of the resources and support that they could have, participated in rebuilding the world.
Mhm.
And I think that devastation is just can't be matched.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to add? Are you ready to
No.
lock in your
Yeah,
vote?
let's lock it in.
All right, here we go. And 3, 2, 1.
Yay, we both picked the nuke.
we both picked the nuke in Las Vegas. Fantastic. What is it about the nuke in Las Vegas that gives it the edge for you?
Weirdly, usually it's when something is more intimate. When you're talking about earlier, when you're talking about the long walk and losing these children, it felt more real and personal because it's a little more relatable. When something is on such a massive scale, it's harder. And this is like a known cognitive thing with our brains. It's harder to be able to relate to that and feel as much impact. But weirdly, in this case, in this matchup, I felt the opposite effect. And maybe it's because, in The Stand, we spent so much time with so many people on both sides and in both of these societies that it did feel more intimate to me.
Yeah.
So it just feels like a bigger loss or bigger devastation.
Yeah. One of the things that you were talking about with the loss of an entire other society reminded me in that moment that they had a school in Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that Julie Laurie, one of the girls, when she sees Tom Cullen, is talking to the woman who works at the school and takes care of the children.
Mm-hmm.
So we do get reminded of that in the book a little bit more often. Of there are just middle people.
Yeah.
There are people who the people who were following Abigail were gonna be in Boulder. The people who were following Flag were gonna end up in Vegas, but there were people who were it sounds like dreaming about both and could have wound up in either place.
And it's a classic like heaven or hell argument. And so if you're not a, traditional like Christian kind of person, that's not your religion, then I think it doesn't make it so clear cut. Like, well, yeah, of course you'd go to Colorado.
Right, yeah.
Like that almost seems scary in a way.
There's another thing that is interesting in that neither of these devastations actually kill their intended target. Because we find out in Dr. Sleep the ghosts are still out there. We find out at the end of The Stand Randall Flagg is just somewhere else. So man, this ended up being a really good matchup.
Yeah.
Thematically anyway. But I think for me that's another thing, that the fact that the nuke doesn't even truly kill Randall Flagg. It sacrifices all those people, and
yeah.
Theoretically we have hinted at our thoughts that it could be the reason for the Badlands and the Talisman and the Devil's Sand that's in Eyes of the Dragon and such. So there's a possibility that's a long-term ripple effect in our canon.
Although I couldn't what if that earlier.
We already locked it in. That's why I'm what if-ing it in.
All right. As long as we agree. Okay.
Yeah, as long as we're on the same page.
Now I wish I would have stuck to my guns.
We can really double down with each other when we're on the same page. 1,000%. All right, our next matchup is going to be the slaughter of Desperation versus the collapse of the Arrowhead Project. I'm going to go ahead and start off this one by talking about the slaughter of Desperation from the book Desperation. What is so amazing about the slaughter of Desperation is that it happens mostly off camera. And there is so much implied violence that happens. While we do later get stories of the way TAC basically wore its first 3 people like a cheap suit through the town, and we had so much narration of specific violence he did, but then we come across the house with the family around the table full of rattlesnakes, and all of the stories that if we were to explore vignette style that would have happened to all these people is pretty insane. Given what we do see, which is, for example, out of the jail cell when they look out and watch him run down the guy in the road and back over him, squishing his head. There's so much hyper violence and cruelty in what happens in Desperation. It is abject cruelty.
I don't think I've ever heard you explain something more perfectly. Like,
Thank you.
sincerely, that's
Thank
perfect.
you.
As you were talking, I had the realization okay, I've been like on my downtime, I'll watch Devin play scary video games,
Mhm.
and they're actually scary. And it made me realize, like, oh, horror movies, just because I love them so much and have so much fun with them, there will be some that'll have moments that'll get me, but in general, I don't find them necessarily scary. I just find them enjoyable. Video games I find really terrifying because you are the character.
Yeah.
Like, you have control. So
Yeah.
whatever bad is happening, it feels like it's happening to you,
Mhm.
even if you're just watching someone else play it. And your description of Desperation made me like see this in my mind as a video game, like a series of these things that you encounter
Yeah.
exploring this town. And I'm like, that is why this book is so, because as I was thinking about this, earlier for my pick, I was like, okay, Desperation there's something about it to me that is gory. Like gory beyond just like blood and guts, but like the gratuity of gore, the like devastation and grossness, not again, like not that physical grossness, but the way it makes you feel gross. Desperation is just such a hard place to live in while you're reading this book.
Yeah.
And we should mention too, in case our listeners haven't listened to those episodes or read it, basically think like Egyptian tomb being opened and unleashing some horror. It's like the Mummy,
Yes.
but instead of the charming and perfect Brendan Fraser, we get the charming but selfish Johnny Marinville.
Oh man. If there wasn't already such a terrific adaptation.
Yeah. I also like the nature of the body horror of this. It's like Cronenberg
Yeah.
meets Clive Barker. It's got some sort of Hellraiser. Like again, I used big quotes for fun earlier, and I'll use it for the word sexy now. This thing that's happening, we talked about this in the episode, it's very sexual.
Yeah.
And that is in and of itself upsetting too. Like all you have to do is touch a small wooden statue and you get a small wooden statue. But I don't know, the idea of a demonic entity bursting through my skin like I was a sausage casing is intolerable.
Gross. Oh my God, that's
Right?
so gross.
Right?
But that is exactly what it's like.
Ugh.
When Tack is wearing the mom,
Oh my
and just I always think of when the parody movies will do this, where they'll have like an old actress go do a big physical stunt, like being tackled by a football
Mhm.
player, and when it cuts to it, it's clearly a grown adult stunt man in just the
Yeah.
same costume getting hit.
Yeah.
That's what I imagine it looks like when you see his mom again, is that it looks like it's a stunt double they didn't even try to hide.
I
Like
love
it's
that.
so stretched and gross.
That's so hilarious and upsetting. Oh my God, you just gave me the best idea.
Yeah.
The parody version of this is that Ellen becomes tacked
Hmm.
but they all leave and go home. And then it's a sitcom about Tack as like wearing your mom, and Tack is trying to play the role of loving mother and wife.
Tack just
It's
wanted to be loved
like
this whole time.
Octodad. Is that
Yeah.
the case?
That's so fucked up. I love it. Let's do the pilot.
All right. So next we have the Arrowhead project, right?
Yeah.
This is referring to the secret project of the shop. We first learned of the shop in Firestarter and their secret government agency that seems like they can't do anything right. They screw up all the time. And
Yes.
I think this is a super tough one because, on the one hand, the other worldly horrors that enter our world through the door that they opened are just beyond terrifying. For anyone who hasn't seen The Mist, which is excellent, by the way, you should be watching that. Think like Elder God style, gigantic tentacle creatures and huge flying death bugs and incredibly upsetting spiders. And I don't mind spiders in real life, but these spiders shouldn't exist. Even in someone else's imagination, Stephen King, they're horrible. But I'm kind of intrigued by all of this, though, because these creatures are animals, you know? They're not coming here with malice.
True.
They're just doing what they do.
That's an interesting point. The devastation that we get from the collapse of the Airhead Project is nature,
Mhm.
essentially.
It's almost like the earth is being terraformed in a way. And like, if you think about that, it's the only way you would get to see another world, technically.
Unless you found a Buick that you couldn't
I am so
move.
upset because as I was making my notes, because I made notes for everything. So one that we're not getting to in this episode, sell. I had like a moment of irritation, which immediately makes me have another moment of irritation about Buick 8. And I was like, oh, thank goodness it's not going to seep its way into our episode this time. And you brought it.
I did.
Mm.
It's crazy. It's crazy how often it comes up. 3, 2, 1. Oh, we've got another split decision. I chose Desperation.
I chose Arrowhead.
Interesting. Okay, I'll defend my position first before
Okay.
we get to our tiebreaker question. So, for me, all right, I'm gonna nip this in the bud straight out of the way because I got on you about the what if, but I'm gonna get away with it a little bit because of regulators.
Okay.
So the look you're giving me.
Well,
is...
am I going to get away with it because of all the books related to the Dark Tower and things that happen in them?
Yeah, I'll allow an argument to be made, I guess. We'll see
like
how far we get
fucked up early on here.
Yeah. So, with the destruction of Desperation, it is it's truly a slaughter. It is a gleeful demon that is just enjoying the ways they get to rip people apart.
Yeah.
The fate of Audrey Wheeler in this, where when we see her in the theater having slowly started hulking out of her clothes because she was left one of the can toy, and the think about the cougar that didn't want to eat the old man, didn't want to, but he had to. The sheer devastation that Tack not only unleashes on this town, the killing Pie by throwing her down the stairs, like the sheer devastation, and what Tack could have done had it gotten out of Desperation in an inhabitable body. And now, like I said, can't technically go there because that didn't happen, but we do get a peek at what could be possible with the events of the regulators. So we see that its potential devastation is pretty high.
And because, I mean, I made that argument earlier, like I definitely see that. I understand that perspective, and I think it is valid, although I will push back because we didn't do that, with the other. We didn't establish that. But I would like to still give you a compelling argument for Arrowhead. So I actually kind of created my argument for it initially in a way that would not prove my point well. This is more
Great
like
strategy.
It'd be that's
CM.
kind of how I compete. I'm not good at it. I don't like competition. I just want to lose right now. I mentioned earlier the difference between the quote unquote evils. Tack, definitely conniving, malice, thoughtful, doing things with intent. Intent is terrifying. So in my head, initially I was thinking, okay, well, these are animals, it's nature. And while that is awesome and terrifying, there's not malice in that. And there's a certain comfort in not having that. But at the same time, just the scale and scope of these creatures and the fact that, like, even though they are not here with malice, it would be like if all of a sudden dinosaurs existed again. They don't care about humans or what we're doing. They might eat us if we taste good or stomp on us because they don't see us, but we don't mean anything to them. But we'd all be dead. Like, that would be it. And just the scale of the last monster where it's like, how does it even fit on the earth? Like, how does the physics, how does the mass of this thing being here not displace the earth's like rotation or something? It's insane. And I just can't believe how quickly our world started changing and the fact that this is not closing. And we know that. We're
Yeah.
left with that. Like, that's definitive. So I think that Arrowhead is just the bigger tragedy, ultimately.
You got me.
Awesome.
You
Okay.
100%. No, it's funny because even in the movie, them fighting back, like the semi hopeful after the needlessly awful to some people. I like the ending.
Yeah, me too. I get it. I we're all right.
Yeah, all of us are
It sucks
correct.
and it's amazing.
Yeah, but I love that in the actual novella, it's just left with, we're gonna keep driving and hope we find something outside of this, in the idea that there is nothing, that this door is open and these two worlds are just together now.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is.
Even if they find something outside of it, it reminds me of Annihilation. It's like, is that going to stay outside of it? Is that going to stay contained?
No.
It didn't
the
seem like it was going to. Yeah.
All right. So the collapse of the Arrowhead project is moving on. We're going to find out which tragedy it will face in the quarterfinals next. We have the flooding of Derry versus the Black Prom.
If I may.
You may.
Set us up for Derry. Even though Derry needs no introduction.
It's introduced by bum, 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 bum.
We're so sweet. Everyone has read it or recognized that they will never read it or Stephen King. We all know what this is all about. So for, our conversation about this, I'd like to list the incidents that have occurred in Derry. One, of course, being the flood. So this is from Stephen King Fandom Wiki, so thank you. In 1741, the original settlers of Derry, which were 340 people, disappeared. Derry was started as a beaver camp until one day 91 people just vanished without a trace. In 1851, John Markson killed his entire family with poison and then ate an entire white nightshade mushroom. In 1864, 120 people, which included 50 kids and 70 adults, were shot by a gang called the Derry Pandrinos, run by Confederate sympathizers, and only 11 people survived that. In 1879, the hacked to pieces bodies of 9 lumberjacks who got snowed in by the Kanduskig were discovered.
Oh, yeah.
And all these things are mentioned in, in other stuff too. It's fun kind of going through this. In 1900, 5 officers were murdered, again by that gang, who were in turn later killed themselves by Pennywise in 1902. In 1906, on Easter, 102 people, 88 of them children, were killed during the Kitchener Ironworks explosion. And that was in 11/22/63.
No, that wasn't it.
But I mean, it shows
Kitchener
up in
Ironworks,
2263. In 1935, the Bradley gang was executed by a group of vigilantes in a shootout downtown.
It sounds like that's going to be an episode of Welcome to Derry. I'm so fucking hyped.
In 1930, the Black Spot burned down. Derry's a hellhole. Truly and sincerely. So I kind of talked about all of the other stuff around this main event. Do you want to talk more about the flood itself? Yeah,
so the flood happens, spoilers, at the end of it, after Pennywise is destroyed, ? And the ripple effect of that, the end of this cycle, the standpipe collapses, and I think they said like 30 million gallons of water or something that's in the standpipe, floods Derry and goes down up Mile Hill and wipes out the downtown. The downtown streets start collapsing into the sewers. It's just absolute devastation of the downtown. I don't remember, is that in those notes, how many people die during the flood?
Oh, no.
Huh.
That would have been a good number to get.
I think I in the episodes we covered, I might have put something in there. I remember they do a list of...
It was double digits, wasn't it?
Yeah, because there are people who... Their little vignettes of somebody having a heart attack during the flood. There are events that happen as the whole town kind of melts down. All right, so let's talk about the Black Prom for a little bit, which I'm really excited because it's the first Stephen King tragedy we all got to talk about together. The Black Prom, for those of you who haven't read Carrie, is the big event in Carrie after the blood is dumped on her at prom. she burns down the school and the town.
Yeah.
And the event overall is referred to as the Black Prom. Before we get into it, do you want to keep Black Prom as just the events of the prom, or as I said, the Black Prom? I take that to mean the events of until Carrie's death.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So that is the whole
town.
scope. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the devastation of the events of the Black Prom. Is there any that jump out to you that you remember?
I always remember Desjardins'
Mhm.
death because to see Carrie take out someone who's like trying to help her on her side, like truly cares and is a good person, just hurt so much because we can say it, right? You're on Carrie's side. Kind of
Yeah,
like,
right.
and yeah, go for it, girl.
Mhm.
And so when she unleashes it and it's just kind of this like mindless rage, but still very intentional because she has to like do these things with her powers, it calls her into question a little bit. It puts you in a weird position as a reader who was sympathetic to Carrie and rooting for her. So that one sticks out to me the most.
We don't really get a like Carrie reading minds
Mhm.
essentially, but we get that she has like the when she connects right before she dies, we get that internal looking through catalog connection that we talk about
Mhm.
where Stephen King refers to brains. When I wonder if with Carrie's abilities, she knew right away that Tommy was dead after the bucket lands on his head, because she's like, that's just an
Yeah.
additional thing that happens right before the slaughter of everyone in there. Uh, and I think she does. And I think the reason being is that there's never an effort to do anything with the body.
I would agree with you. And I don't know if we ever talked about
I
that. I mean, it
don't
was our
think
first
so.
episode, so
Yeah.
we weren't deep thinkers because we are now. You know what I mean? We didn't ask each other probing questions because we were too nervous.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's safe to say, like I would argue, I'm going to read it that way, that she did know that immediately because it also makes sense with her character, what we've seen. She is this meek girl who constantly just gets shit on and kicked in the ass over and over again. And if she was upset about the blood hitting her, I feel like I could see her finally getting angry about this because she has grown and she has shown more confidence. But at the same time, even when you have like growth and forward progress, something unexpected that triggers you, you can kind of revert instantly
Oh
back to
yeah.
that old response and be like, dang it. Okay, got to make another therapy appointment. Got to work through that. Thought I was done, not done. And so I could see her, if it weren't for Tommy being dead, just being devastated and humiliated
Mhm.
and not vengeful like this.
One of the details about the Black Prom that has always stuck out to me is after she leaves the school. Well, one is the when she severs the guy's fingers in the door.
Ooh,
That's
yeah.
pretty great.
Oh, because every time you close your finger in a door, like
Yeah.
that's what it feels like happened. And then it never does. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm always left with shock, like, wow, my finger's still attached.
Oh, thank God. It's going through town and destroying the fire hydrants.
Mm-hmm.
It being so specific. It's so intentional as to part of her destruction.
Something really terrible happened, and it
Mhm.
wasn't that they did something arguably very, very shitty to her. It was that they killed this boy, this innocent boy.
All right. Do you have anything else to say on either of these? You ready to lock in?
Yeah, ready to lock
Let's
in.
do it. 3, 2, 1. Split
Ooh.
decision.
Okay. I have a very weak argument.
Go ahead and share who you chose.
Okay. I chose the Black Prom. So, Josh, that means you chose Derry.
Yes, that's the flooding of Derry, yeah.
But the reason I chose it, again, because you guys, I tried so hard to take March Madness, like to really put in effort and try to understand it. And I still fundamentally did this wrong. So like I said, I've been course correcting this entire episode because I was placing myself in these and trying to figure out which I could survive. So that's what I was going to pick. So my argument is that I didn't go to my prom and I wasn't popular and I was friends with the Carrie Whites of my school.
Goodness.
So I think my odds of survival are pretty good. And, unlike in Derry, this is one messed up household, not an entire town, which again is just making my argument even weaker. But yeah, that's my odds are high.
Your argument is solely on survivability, and I admire that about you.
This is how I understand wrestling moves, how you explain them. I've reversed it.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
I think there's something wrong with me.
I think you just have more important things to worry about. You're getting a PhD.
I know, but I thought really hard about this. I used my PhD brain. You guys, I'm going to be a good doctor.
Great.
Of the brain.
That's what it'll say on the certificate.
Uh-huh.
My argument to win you over for the flooding of Derry is going to be the loss of life. So we know that the devastation may not be in the entire town, the entire town's youth, like it is in Chamberlain.
But we can include all the other stats I gave, right? Because that's kind of how we've been.
The evil of Derry, the scope of Derry, the amount of life that has been taken in Derry, and the fact that all the people who die in Derry are innocent almost all the time. That's they are the most defenseless, the children that it devours. They go on missing. And with the collapse of the standpipe tearing down their entire Up Mile Hill, it's like the big business district. So not only does it destroy the town's water,
it's their economy.
It destroys their entire economy. It destroys the literal asphalt, collapsing it into the sewers. And it creates a scope of devastation that, because Derry is Derry, it is just another hole it never quite digs itself out from, I feel like. And I think the flooding does have an impact that we end up saving lives with in Dreamcatcher. Because the plan was to poison Derry's water, but now the standpipe wasn't there. So...
Wow, yeah.
The flooding of Derry saved more lives than it took.
Wow. That's interesting. I like that. While you were talking, I was also thinking, it was just swaying me more to your side, that we're left with ambiguity about this evil in Derry and if it's still there. And Carrie is gone.
Yeah.
And so we have the devastation of the Black Prom is finite. Not that there won't be, trauma among the town's inhabitants, and that's going to have long-lasting effects, generational effects. But yeah, I'll go with Derry.
All right, the flooding of Derry takes it for this round. So going into the quarterfinals, we are going to be discussing the collapse of the Arrowhead project versus the flooding of Derry. But that is going to be for an episode later down the line. But that is it for this episode of March Madness. For CM Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn, and we'll see you next time.